Hi and welcome. Let's talk about the Witch's Sabbath, arranged by Deborah Baker Monday. This is a work by Hector Berlioz. This is the final movement to Symphonie Fantastique. I would highly encourage you to go listen to the original so you know what this string orchestra arrangement is based on. But it is the final movement, and we're going to talk about one section here, actually one tiny excerpt from a section. I'm looking at the music here. The section here is called the Witch's Round Dance. It's marked dotted quarter note equals 88. It's in A minor. Well, we're going to talk about that, the key signature here in a second. But this is an excerpt which involves a lot of chromaticism, of course, a lot of triplets, gives it that dance-like character, and there's a lot to unpack here in these few lines. So we're going to focus this video just on this excerpt. Now, this video is a complete guide to this excerpt, so be sure and use the timestamps down below in the description to jump to whatever section you need. If you need to, there's going to be talk about the intonation, some of the string crossings, maybe some of the dynamics, whatever. But make sure you look down there, and of course, check out the timestamps for the play-along sections, which will be at the end. And I will do it in 3 tempos, as I usually do: a very, very slow tempo, kind of a medium tempo, and then up to performance tempo. The quarter note equals 88. All right, so let's get into it. Now, the first thing, of course, to talk about here in this section is the intonation. There's a lot of chromaticism in this excerpt, and one could argue that we're not even really in a key because we do have so much chromaticism. Like I said, the key signature says A minor, but we're all over the place. We might be in G minor. Who knows? I mean, it's a witch's dance right there. This is like stereotypical, like whatever you imagine, whatever cartoon you can drum up in your mind around the boiling pot kettle, the whole thing. This is French Romantic era music. All right, so let's get into the first kind of chromatic thing that happens here, which is kind of the third line here of this excerpt that I'm looking at. This is measured, by the way, 219 to 246. 219 to 246. So I'm over here in measure 27, 20, 229 here. If you haven't numbered your measures, maybe do them. All right. So I'm at measure 229 that starts here with this A, open A. And feel free to mark down in your music any of these fingerings that I suggest. And on some of this stuff, I'm going to give you a couple of different fingerings. But here at line A, it doesn't have to be too complicated here. I'm doing an extension to the G sharp, then going back to half position. I like shifting on 2 because 2 is your biggest, strongest finger, and it seems like for me, it's easier. Some people like to shift on 1-1, and this is the first place where I would give you options here in 229. All right, you go 1-1. Now remember the whole step extension here to get back to the B flat there in 230. And this is key to getting it in tune here. And this whole thing is making sure you have a good fingering. Make sure you decide on which fingering, if you do have alternate fingerings, that you decide which one you're going to use for sure and stick to it so that you can learn the excerpt. All right, but I'm just staying either in first position or half position here, starting in 229. Here in 233, I think it's okay to shift to 4/4. Even when we get up to tempo, at dotted quarter note equals 88, it's not that fast, and that's what Miss Monday has marked in the score. So, yeah, you can do some 4/4s here. That 4 to get to the G sharp. Now, 234, 235. This is a textbook chromatic passage. We're moving all half steps all the way up here to the G flat. And in the part here, they've actually written in a standard chromatic fingering, which is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, all the way up. So starting here on the second big beat here of 234, I'm going open 1, 2, just what they have printed. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, to get up here to the G flat. I'll make sure that A starts on an up bow. Like I said, I'm going to record them at the end here for you to play along to. But how do you check your intonation? Well, make sure you, as always, I always say, hang on to your anchor notes. You know, ringing tones, open strings, things like that. So, for instance, when you get to the C natural, the first third finger here that you get to, make sure that it's ringing against the C. Same thing. Second finger on the D here should be a ringing tone against the open D string. All right. These are like landmarks. These are what I call anchors. They're going to anchor my hand to the correct intonation as I'm going up here. And tune up that F sharp to the open D string. You could do this with a drone pitch. You could do, I would maybe suggest A440 because that's what we tune to, because when you're doing chromatic scales, what key are you in? So there's not really a tonal center. So just use A, but something else might work. But if you do use A, there's lots of consonant connections that you can make to the A. So A is fine, or just use open D, but use something, all right, to check your fingers all the way up here to the G flat. If you have to, even, put on the tuner, put on individual notes that you are shifting to when you have a chromatic passage, because for the fact, I kind of said it a second ago, there is no tonal center. There is no key that we're in when we're doing this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 over and over and over again. And so maybe you have to pick out, the notes that you're shifting to. Put it on the C sharp to get your first finger there. Put it on the E natural to get your first finger there in fourth position. Don't take fourth position for granted because, maybe your ears lead you astray because we're doing this chromatic passage. Whatever you have to do there, use a tuner, use a drone pitch. Make sure you're in tune. Make sure you stick to the fingering. Make sure you remember that you are doing all half steps. Check against the open strings. Do all of these things, and you will eventually get it in your ear correctly and really, really play it in tune. The passage that comes after it is not too bad. We just have all half steps here. Now for the intonation here, this is measure 36, 37, 238. They have printed their 3, and I'll tell you why. It's because of all the chromatic stuff, all the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And you really do need to use a 3 on the A flat at the end of this passage. That's a good idea. And so they're trying to keep you consistent with the fingerings here and keeping that half step between 2 and 3. That is actually a legitimate argument for the fingering they have printed. Feel free, though, to just stay in fourth position and play the G with your fourth finger. It's not that big of a stretch. As long as you can remember, what you're doing and where to put the half steps, I think it's totally okay to just stay in fourth position, get that G and that F sharp really, really well in tune, and that way you can, once you get to the forte in 236, you can play all 3 of those measures in the same position without shifting. But you do need to go, I would not put a 4 on the A flat. It's just wonky going 4, 3, 4 in that position. I would just go ahead and do the 3 as they have printed there on the A flat. Okay. 241, again, we're back to some chromatic stuff. You really need to practice this one slow. It's kind of a virtuosic bowing they've thrown in here. Make sure you go very, very slow and think about your half steps and whole steps, and remember what notes are repeated and when you are shifting, because the B flat repeats and then the B natural repeats, okay? So and I would probably do 1, 1 here, not a 2, 2 as far as the shifting. And I would mark in the bowing for sure. Remind myself that the middle of the measure 241 starts on a down bow, okay, just like the opening, and that 242 starts on an up bow. Bowing's really important so that when you get to 243 and you're doing the fortissimo, that it does start down bow and then works itself out before you end there at the beginning of 246. Okay, that's all the major spots. Sorry, I left one out. Pick up to 226 for sure, second position. Okay, so you're going along. Here in 225, use that last open G to get to second position. Second finger here on the G. And then play in second position here. For sure do that. And I like 1, 4, 2, 1, then shift to half position so that you're just doing one shift there. Okay, you could go 4, 1, 4, 2, 2 on the C natural, but then you'd have to shift again to get back to the B flat, and you're throwing in an extra shift, more chances to be out of tune. So just stay in second position. And the rest is just in first position. Okay, that's the intonation. All right, let's talk about rhythm and, of course, how to get this kind of fast excerpt up to tempo. And in talking about the rhythm, you want to focus, the main focus probably is going to be going fast, because the actual rhythmic figures are not too complicated. It's just triplets repeated over and over again. If there is one rhythmic figure that is maybe a little bit complicated, that is the syncopation that comes in 228 and 232, where we have, okay, and then happens again there in 232. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, 1 and a 2 and a. And notice throughout this that we do count it in 2. So, we have the dotted quarter note equals 8 and 8. Whenever you have a fast 6/8, you always want to count it in 2. 2 big beats. That's going to help you keep up with the rhythm much more easily. And as far as the syncopation goes, probably the best thing that's going to help you is to play along to the slow version, to the medium version, to the fast version that I'm going to put here at the end of the video. So let's put our focus on how to get this thing going fast, because that can be really the most challenging thing. Of course, first of all, use a metronome. Make sure you are always playing rhythmically, and make sure you are always playing and thinking slow version. What does that mean? It means playing with a full tone. If it says forte, play forte. Actually, when you're going slow, you should ignore all pianos. Always make a great tone, because you have to make sure that your bow is engaged in the string, that the arm weight is there, that the bow speed is there. And having a full tone is the indicator that you are, in fact, doing all of those things, okay? So always have a really great, full, big sound when you are practicing slow. That is the rule, okay? Once you start to go fast, yes, add some nuance. All right, add, the dynamics, all those little things. But as far as getting it up to tempo, teaching the hands to be coordinated, big sound, always big sound. Okay, now, and what I'm about to show you here in this triplet passage, as far as moving the fast note around, because it's a little different for triplets. Whenever you have duples, doing dotted rhythms really, really helps. Where we go fast, slow, or slow, fast, okay, where we turn, say, 16th notes into a dotted 8/16th rhythm in order to coordinate our fingers. You do the same thing with triplets, but instead of having these two places to put the fast note, either the first or the second, we have the first, second, and the third, because we're counting these two big beats in triplets. So we have to move the fast note around. So it's a little bit more tricky, but not that tricky. I'm going to put the metronome on 60, which is our middle tempo of our 3 tempos that we want to practice at here. So what I'm doing first is putting the short note in the middle, because that's the Sicilian rhythm that we're most familiar with. Okay, and actually probably the one we need the most. Then we're going to put the short note at the beginning. All right, and then we want to put the short note at the end. But before we get to that here in detail, good fingering. Okay, and I'm using this passage here at 230, 231, because this is the one that was the most difficult for me to really get nice and clean and up to speed. And the thing that was really hurting it was trying to do too many shifts in 231. Resist the temptation, as I ultimately had to, of wanting to go 4 on the F sharp, 4 on the G natural as you're coming down the scale. It's real tempting to want to, because you can play G natural, F natural, E natural, all in first position, and then shift to half position. But what you're doing is you're introducing a third shift in that one measure, okay? And ultimately, it's going to confuse your brain, mess up your fingers, and add an unnecessary shift. And this is one place where, you know, you have to maybe do something that seems at first a little counterintuitive in order to get it nice and organized under your fingers. So ultimately, what I've settled on here is to play all the way down to F natural in second position, then shift to the E natural on a 2 here, half position. So then you just have the one shift here in this measure. So I'm going, let's go from the beginning actually of 230. So there's the F natural, then shift to the E. Okay, much easier, much cleaner, much better fingering to do it that way. I wouldn't do it any other way actually, because the other way just wasn't working for me. Now there is some wisdom, you know, in saying, well, I'm shifting at the beginning of the big beats. I'm trying to organize it under my fingers by shifting, you know, at the beginning where the G natural is and at the beginning where the E flat is. And there is some wisdom in that, except that it's so many shifts all over the place, and in order it just, you could try it, but I highly recommend you do 4, 3, 1, 2, 1, and just have the one shift in there in this passage. Okay, so let's move this. I'm going to put the metronome on here lightly. It's really important that you turn the metronome on for these dotted rhythms, okay, so that the short note is up to the tempo we're trying to achieve, yes? And so putting it on 60 gets us pretty close to the 88. I don't know, you could probably figure that out with some exact math. If you could put that down in the comments if you found the exact tempo that would be the triplet at 88. All right, but I'm just going to go with 60 here. All right, so let's put the short note in the middle. And remember, big tone, and make the short note as short as possible. So here we go. I'm really sticking the bow on the string, and I'm just sticking to this measure here. 230 and 231. Whoops. Okay, so that's putting the short note in the middle. As I mentioned, let's put the short note at the very beginning. Okay, and be very careful here. Do that again with me. Let's add 229 here because there's a little string crossing there. Yes. Now let's put the short note at the end. Make sure the tone is really clean. Let's see what we got for our money here. I'm probably going even way faster than I need to. Okay, so let's do all of those slowly so that you can play along and make sure that you are actually putting the short note in the correct spot. So here's the first one with the short note in the middle. Short note at the beginning. And here's the short note at the end, very slow. All right. I would do that in any of these passages, okay, that I need to, especially 234. All right, let's do 234 actually this way. I will do 233, okay? so that you can play along, so you can understand how to apply this rhythm to here. I'm going to start right there in 233. Okay, so that's the short note in the middle. Let's put the short note at the front. Sorry, 233. And then the short note at the end. Let's do this with the metronome. Short note in the middle, 60. Short note at the beginning. Short note at the end. Ooh, that one was tricky. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to do these with the metronome. I think it helps, all right, to ensure that you're doing it rhythmically, making that short note short enough. And that's how you would learn, that's the using the dotted rhythms, okay, to get this triplet passage up to speed. Of course, if you just, even if you don't do the dotted rhythms, if you just use the metronome and go even slower, okay, when I say slower, as you're going to see at the end of the video, 35, okay, and I literally mean it. If you got to go. The mistake all students make when they're going slow is not making a big sound, not making a good tone, a solid sound with the bow while they're going slow. If you play mousy, if you play pianissimo, okay, if you let the bow scrape across the string and glide across the string while you're going slow, that's why the slow practice doesn't translate into going fast. You have to have a big sound. All right, so here's the play along section. Use the timestamps and use whatever version you need to. Use the gearbox here on YouTube to slow it down and really dial in the tempo that you need to practice it at. I am going to have the metronome going lightly here in the background to make sure I stick to the tempo. So I'm going 35 for the slow tempo of understanding, going 60 for this tempo of learning. Okay, starting to get a little more fluidity there under my fingers. And then, of course, we're going to go 88, which is our concert tempo in the score. All right, let's do the next tempo, which is going to be around 60 for the dotted quarter note. Let's just check our tempo here. Here we go. And notice at that tempo, I'm still pretty much ignoring the dynamics, okay? If my goal is just to get it up to speed, get it under my fingers, yes, you do need to add the dynamics. It changes the bow, it changes everything, all right? But if my goal is to go faster, then I gotta make that my goal and I gotta ignore the dynamics, okay? All right, here we go, 88. Let's check our tempo here. Now, as you start to learn this and get better at it, there's going to be a tendency to rush. Because 88, it's actually not that bad. It's not that fast. Let's hear it without the subdivisions. It's just a nice, steady tempo. Here we go.